You know, here's something pretty startling. Asthma-related ER visits. They make up a third of all emergency room cases in the US.
A full third. Wow.
Yeah. And like when you think about your own allergies, maybe just a runny nose you get, sometimes it's easy to kind of brush them off.
Sure, seems minor.
But today on the deep dive, we're looking at why allergies and asthma are actually significant public health challenges. They affect millions.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to understand the science, why our bodies react like this, why these things seem more common now, and the bigger picture, the consequences. We've reviewed quite a bit of research for this. So yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so what's really fascinating, fundamentally, is that both allergies and asthma are basically, well, a case of mistaken identity by your immune system.
Mistaken identity.
Yeah. It's designed to protect you, right? But here, it kind of overreacts to things that are usually completely harmless. Stuff like pollen or pet dander.
Okay. So if you have an allergy, what's actually happening inside, like the mechanism?
So imagine your body encounters something, let's say pollen, for the first time. If you're predisposed to allergies, your immune system goes, whoa, threat, even though it isn't one.
Uh-huh.
And it makes these specific antibodies called IgE, designed just for that pollen. Then these IgE antibodies stick themselves onto mast cells. You have those cells all over.
Gotcha. So pollen is now on the immune system's watch list, essentially. What about the next time you breathe it in?
Right. The next exposure, those IgE antibodies on the mast cells recognize the pollen instantly. They grab onto it.
Okay.
And that binding action, it's like flipping a switch on the mast cells. They suddenly release a whole bunch of inflammatory chemicals. Histamine is the big one everyone knows.
Ah, histamine. That's why antihistamines work.
Exactly. And those chemicals cause all the classic symptoms. The sneezing, the itchy eyes, runny nose, sometimes skin rashes, all that fun stuff.
That makes sense for allergies, but asthma, that feels different. It seems, well, potentially much more serious. How does that connect?
You're right. It is distinct. Asthma is a chronic condition affecting the lungs, while allergies can be a major trigger for asthma attacks. So can other things like catching a cold, exercise, or even just cold air for some people.
So what's the core issue in asthma?
The underlying problem is inflammation and constriction, a narrowing of the airways in your lungs. That makes it physically hard to breathe.
Okay.
And that can lead to those really frightening asthma attacks, which can sometimes be life-threatening.
It's really sobering when you see the statistics. Asthma affects what, around 15 million people in the U.S.?
Roughly, yes.
And it causes about 5,000 deaths every year.
Yeah.
Significant. And what's really striking is that the prevalence, the number of people with asthma has apparently doubled in just the last 20 years.
It has. It's a major trend.
What's going on there? Why the increase?
That's the million-dollar question, really. Researchers are working hard on it. It looks like a mix of things. Genetics definitely plays a role, but some people just seem more susceptible. But environmental factors are huge, too. Things like air pollution, changes in diet, maybe even our modern hygiene standards, the hygiene hypothesis.
The idea that we're too clean early on.
Sort of, yeah. The theory is that less exposure to certain microbes in early childhood might affect how the immune system develops, potentially making it more prone to overreact later. It's complex.
And there are disparities, too, right? I read that mortality rates are disproportionately high for African-American children with asthma.
That's tragically true, and it's a critical area of concern and research. The reasons are likely multifaceted, involving socioeconomic factors, access to care, environmental exposures, and potentially genetic components, too. We need much more focus there.
And it isn't just airborne stuff. Food allergies seem way more common now, too.
Yeah.
Peanuts, tree nuts, almonds, cashews, walnuts.
Oh, absolutely. The rise in food allergies is another major trend. Roughly 3 million Americans deal with peanut or tree nut allergies alone.
Wow.
And these are particularly dangerous because they're leading causes of anaphylaxis. That's that severe whole-body allergic reaction.
Which can be deadly.
Very quickly, yes. That's why people at risk must carry an epinephrine auto-injector, like an EpiPen.
Right. That buys time.
Crucial time. It can rapidly reverse those life-threatening symptoms.
Uh-huh.
The airway closing, the drop in blood pressure, until they can get emergency medical help. It's literally a lifesaver.
So putting this all together, allergies, asthma, these clearly aren't just, minor annoyances people have to live with. The impact is much bigger.
Much bigger. Think economically. Lost work days, missed school days. That adds up. Then there's the cost of medications. Doctor visits, over 28 million appointments a year just for these conditions in the U.S.
28 million visits.
Yeah. It puts a huge strain on the healthcare system and the economy overall. It really underscores why we need continuous research.
What kind of research is happening now?
Scientists are digging deeper into the genetic factors, trying to pinpoint specific genes that increase risk, and they're developing new treatments like more targeted biologic therapies that interfere with specific parts of the immune reaction rather than just treating symptoms.
Interesting. So, for everyone listening, I guess the main takeaway is don't underestimate these conditions. What might seem like just sniffles or a bit of wheezing are actually part of a major public health picture.
Exactly. They have real human costs, real economic costs.
And they show just how incredibly complex and sometimes misguided our immune responses can be.
Right. It's a delicate balance.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? With these conditions on the rise, how will our healthcare systems and public health strategies need to adapt in the coming years? Something to think about.
Definitely something to consider.
Well, thanks for exploring this with us today. It's been enlightening.
My pleasure.
And for everyone listening, remember to subscribe, like, and follow for more deep dives.